It's fall. The geese are headed south, and it's time for you to hit the woods. So button things up, find where they hide, and pattern the deer you seek. Come into Cabela's Great Outdoor Days and save over 20% on Herter's Select Grade handgun ammo. Save $180 after mail-in rebate on Walther PPS M2 pistols with instant savings of $80. And get a Vortex Diamondback 3.5 to 10 by 50 V-Plex rifle scope, just $149.99. Shop in-store and at Cabela's.com.
Where should Ezekiel Elliott go in FFPC drafts? How does Sammy Watkins' ADP change in Los Angeles? And how big of a target will Jordan Matthews be for you now? Plus, FFMastermind.com's Michael Nazarek chats about his FFPC Pros versus Joe's draft. KFFSC Commissioner Ferrell Elliott helps answer your emails. And the prognosticator himself, Alex Kaganovsky, brings you his season-long props for wide receivers. We've got a great show for you. Dave Gerzak is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now listening to the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. It's the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Dave Gerzak. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for football analysis from the best fantasy players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Dave Gerzak.
Thank you so much, Rob. Greetings and salutations, all you Balkaholics and Gerzak fanatics. Welcome to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com right here on the Fantasy Sports Radio Network. I am your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman, and my co-host is indeed the patron saint of fantasy football. He is the Dizzle. He is Dave Gerzak. Coming up on tonight's show, Michael Nazarek from FFMastermind.com gives us his thoughts on Jordan Reed's injury. KFFSC commish Ferrell Elliott dishes on Kenny Golladay, and the prognosticator Alex Kaganovsky talks about which wide receiver props he bet on fresh off his trip to Sin City. Shout out to the chat room right now. Feel free to post any questions you all might have in there. If you want to connect with us on Twitter, you can do so at HSFF Hour, at Eric Balkman, or at David Gerzak. Mike Nazarek is on Twitter at FFMastermind. Ferrell Elliott is on Twitter at KFFSC, and of course, Alex Kaganovsky on Twitter at Alex_FFPC. You can post on our Facebook page at facebook.com/HSFF Hour if you want to chime in and talk with us. Give us a call at 347-426-3682. That's 347-GAME-OVA. You can also email the show at the inbox at highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com. If you have any questions for us, now is the time to send them. We'll try to get to all the chat room questions, tweets, and emails. In the fantasy feedback segment later on in the show with Ferrell Elliott tonight, helping to answer all of your emails. It is a very exciting night, Dave. I'm just curious, after all the news we saw today, who in the hell else got traded? Who else got suspended? It seemed like this was the classic NFL Friday news dump, and they piled it all on here in a span of about 10 minutes today.
You were very upset, Balky, because you had the show all planned out. You and Rob were doing all the stuff, and I didn't even know that. I learned today that there was planning involved in the show.
Yeah, there is.
And then all this news happened, and apparently you guys had to do something different. You had to actually integrate it.
Yeah, we've integrated it. We'll get into it, and we're going to talk actually with Mike Nazarek. One of the first things we'll talk to him about is all these things that happened today with the Elliott suspension, with the Jordan Matthews trade, the Sammy Watkins trade, and get input from a real pro about this. We have to take our first break, but the show is just getting started here on the Fantasy Sports Radio Network. I am Eric Balkman. He is Dave Gerzak, and you are listening live to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. Eric Balkman, Dave Gerzak here, the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, as we come up on one of our final shows in August here, and it's a banner show tonight. It's a fantastic show because we have not one, not two, but three guests, and I want to bring in the first guest that we have for you tonight on the air right now. He is a 30 years of fantasy football experience, including more than 25 fantasy championships in 10 different leagues. Longtime member of the Pro Football Writers of America. Other than directing one of the longest-running fantasy football information websites since 1996, his primary claim to fame is the fact that he won the SI.com Experts League title for 4 consecutive seasons, making him the only winner of that league in its existence. He's been a contributing author for many fantasy football magazines as well, including Fantasy Football Pro Forecast, Power Ranking System, Fantasy Football Report, and Fantasy Football Draft Book, as well as a periodic columnist for SI.com's Fantasy Central feature. He is the CEO and president of Fantasy Football Mastermind, Inc., where you can find him at FFMastermind.com. You follow him on Twitter.
CEO, I love it.
That's right. You follow him on Twitter at FFMastermind. Please welcome back onto the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour from FFMastermind.com, Michael Nazarek. Hey, man, what's up tonight? Thanks for hanging out with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure, guys. And wow, after that introduction, I don't know, what am I, 100 years old here? But I tell you, so much to talk about today. I'm just drained with all this news.
It's crazy, and let's get into it, and we'll lead things off. Get your quick opinion on Ezekiel Elliott. We know he's suspended for 6 games. Now, he is appealing it. We don't know how much is going to be, if any, is going to be shaved off. We don't know if the whole thing is going to be shaved off. But, Michael, for anybody who is drafting right now, how should they be treating Ezekiel Elliott in their drafts?
With kid gloves. But seriously, like you say, we're not sure if he's going to actually be able to, quote, win an appeal and actually win back a couple of games or not. I'm thinking that if he does win some portion of the appeal, that it will be reduced to maybe 4 games. But I would not be surprised if he has to sit out all 6 games. And he's going to slide in a lot of drafts here, but I don't think he's going to slide as far as people may think.
What about let's briefly touch on the Watkins trade too, because he moves from Buffalo to the Rams, and Buffalo a strong running attack as far as their offense goes. He moves to another offense that you would think, with the upgrades they made to their offensive line, with Todd Gurley being there, with Sean McVay, a pretty creative head coach, they bring in Watkins. It's kind of another heavily centric run attack there. How does Watkins' value change from Buffalo to Los Angeles?
Well, it may be good for Jared Goff there in his development. He's very inexperienced. He's only starting his 2nd season here, and he didn't have much success last year. I think in the short term, at least for this year, it's a bit of a downgrade for Sammy Watkins and for his fantasy potential. I still think that he does have, the possibility of catching for around 1,000 yards, maybe 5 or 6 scores here. But, and that's assuming he stays healthy, because that's the big bugaboo with Sammy Watkins has always been the guy just can't stay healthy, can't stay on the field, and that's not going to help the Rams if he can't play.
Mike, we want to talk about your pros versus Joe's draft, but last thing I want to talk to you about with the news today, Jordan Matthews also heads to Buffalo from Philadelphia. You look at what he left in Philly. Torrey Smith was there. Alshon Jeffrey was there. Zach Ertz, Darren Sproles, all those pass catchers there. He goes to Buffalo that suddenly needs pass catchers. No Sammy Watkins now. They just signed Anquan Bolden. Zay Jones is a rookie. How does his value change? How are you looking at Jordan Matthews from a drafting standpoint now?
Yeah, I was not high on Jordan Matthews going into this season because of the situation in Philly, but he's catching a break here. The situation, though, is that the fact that he needs to come in and learn the system really quickly, develop quick chemistry with Tyrod Taylor, and if he does, he has the opportunity to at least try to become the number 1 wide receiver on that team. I think Anquan Bolden is going to catch more passes because of this, and Zay Jones is going to have more of an immediate impact. But it's a much better situation for Jordan Matthews, especially on down the road there. That's provided that Tyrod Taylor stays on the straight and narrow and continues to develop.
And for anybody who wants to know, Mike Nazarek knows what he's talking about. Case in point, another main event league title for you in the FFPC last year. Mike, congrats on the back-to-back league championships. Did you find yourself, looking back in these last 2 years, did you employ a similar team management and draft strategy these 2 years that have been so successful for you in the main event?
Basically, we have. I do have a co-manager on this event. Dr. Gil Bovar has been my long-term friend, and I tell you, we seem to balance out things a lot he wants to jump on the latest bandwagon craze, all the rookies and such, and I tend to maybe hang on to a little bit of the veterans a little bit, but I think we balance each other out. But I think the key, especially the last couple of years, is that we've hit on the right number 3 running back. Last year, particularly in Melvin Gordon, and a couple of years ago, our number 3 was Devonta Freeman. I'm telling you, you get guys like this, and it's fantasy gold because they just spring right to the top. You can plug them in there as your number 3, and of course, in the dual flex system, if you've got pretty good tight ends too, and we all seem to draft the right tight end at the right time, a couple in the first 7 or 8 rounds, and everybody stays healthy, then you can have a success in this event.
Man, it's crazy that he's done so well in the event. And then on top of that, now I have to ask you a question about pros versus Joes. You won another league title in that, and this is your second straight third-place finish overall. I didn't even know that.
Third-place overall finish was Mike Nazarek the last 2 years.
That is, it's impressive, super impressive. You're
out of
beating pros,
72 teams, I should say, too. Yeah.
Beating pros, beating Joes. How have you been so successful beating these tough drafters, in not only in your league, but in the overall format?
Well, the last couple of years, I've made a point to do my projections and my analysis before the draft. Significantly before the draft. I know we draft early in late July and all, and just particular target certain receivers and running backs late and go. I went heavy last year on the Green Bay Packers wide receivers, and that really helped out. I drafted Devonta Adams, I think, around, I don't know, what it was, 23, 24. And Ty Montgomery was one of my last picks just to say, well, maybe if Devonta doesn't pan out, maybe Ty will. Little did I know, of course, that Ty Montgomery become the starting running back for the Packers, and both these guys were major contributors to my team's success down the road.
It's all about getting those pockets of fantasy goodness, and certainly the Packers pass catchers were one of those pockets last year. We're talking with Michael Nazarek from Fantasy Football Mastermind, FFMastermind.com. It looks like you've done a pretty good job assembling another very competitive team this year, Mike, and it was a tough draft that you were in this year because you had, including yourself, you had 3 of the other league winners last year in the Pros versus Joes in one draft. It was you, Kimra Schleicher was in there as well, and we had Jared Smola in your draft, and somebody else I'm forgetting about now too. I want to say, was it Tim McCullough? Might have been Tim McCullough. All in that same draft. So you had 4 league winners. It was an extraordinarily tough draft, and it looks like you did a pretty good job. You get Delaney Walker over Eric Ebron at the 5'10" this year, so you decide to go with a tight end at the end of the 5th. Why did you take Delaney Walker over what a lot of people are saying is going to be a big breakout season for Eric Ebron?
Well, Ebron he's had problems catching the football here and there. That and the fact that they don't really just target him in the red zone, especially down there. And Delaney Walker has just always been a favorite of mine personally, but just because he's always been a big, huge part of the offense of the Titans. And Marcus Mariota just loves to throw to him. And, of course, a couple of years ago, they were always down late, and they were just throwing and Delaney Walker was catching all kinds of passes and all. I just think that it's going to continue this. I know they improved the wide receiver core, especially with Corey Davis, the rookie, and Eric Decker there. But I still think that Delaney Walker is one of the better tight ends in the league. And, he's not in my top 3, but he's certainly in my top 5 or 6. I'm not even sure if Ebron's in my top 10 right off the top of my head. I just prefer Walker in that situation.
And then talking about tight ends, you decided to back him up with Vernon Davis in the 13th round. Davis normally has an ADP like in the 16th, 17th area. So are you really worried about Jordan Reed and his big toe, that it's more of a problem than Washington's letting out? Actually, I don't know if it's his big toe. One of his toes.
One of his toes, yeah.
Well, the value that came when he slid to me, and I had to take him there. But of course, then I said, I've got to end up getting Vernon Davis here. And I took him a few rounds earlier, but still like the 13th round. And I remember one of the guys in the draft also said, you snaked me there. I think he was planning on grabbing Vernon Davis with his next pick. So I guess I got him at the right time. That's the value of the chat room sometimes. But yeah, I'm concerned about it. But the bottom line here is that Vernon Davis is almost as good as Jordan Reed, and he's not as dynamic and all, but they like to use him too. So I've got other tight ends on the team there, and I'm not too concerned that if Jordan Reed goes down. I think Vernon Davis will fill in fairly good.
Yeah, we saw last year when Jordan Reed was out, Vernon Davis stepped up and actually played like he was about 10 years younger than he actually was. So Certainly a good flyer pick in a tight end premium format like pros versus Joes there. Mike, we have roughly 60 seconds before we got to take a quick break. But one thing I want to talk to you about, touching on with Ezekiel Elliott earlier. We know that he is suspended for 6 games, and whether he serves that or not, we don't know. But we do know that if he is suspended, if he does miss those first few weeks of the season, Des Bryant is actually probably going to be much more of a focal point of the offense. Are you bumping Des Bryant up in your rankings at all, knowing that Dallas, if they're going to win football games, it's going to have to be through the playmaker, Des Bryant, through the first month of the season?
Well, I spent the whole day analyzing the entire team. That's all we've been doing here. And I'll tell you, to tell you the truth, the way the Cowboys use Des Bryant, it's kind of a hit and miss. They don't want to run the whole offense through him. They use him, obviously. He's a very talented receiver and all, but they still do have Darren McFadden there. And we've got to remember that he ran for 1,000 yards a couple of years ago, before Zeke was on the scene. And they also have Alfred Morris there, who looked pretty good in the first preseason game last night. So I think they might throw a little bit more to him early on, but not necessarily enough to bump him up, because I've got him near one of my top of my tiers. I think the 4th tier of the wide receiver, and bumping him up any higher, I just don't see it. I like him, but there's still going to be some games, I think, where you're going to get 2 for 20 out of Des Bryant, and it's kind of a frustrating thing. That's why I really don't advocate drafting him as a number 1 wide receiver on fantasy.
Michael Nazarek from FFMastermind.com. We have much more coming up with him. You are listening to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour with Eric Balkman and Dave Gerzak. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour rolls on the Fantasy Sports Radio Network. Michael Nazarek from FFMastermind.com, at FFMastermind on Twitter. The consecutive 3rd place overall on the Pros versus Joes finish the last couple of years, and dual main event champion over the last couple of years as well. So certainly a heavy resume coming in tonight. Hopefully you are you all are learning as much as we are tonight, Mike. And I want to talk to you about the tight end premium league like the FFPC. How have you typically drafted tight ends in that format over the years? Are you usually getting an elite one early? Are you getting 2 top 10 options, after the top elite tier is gone? Or are you trying to build your roster with 3 or 4 upside options later on?
Probably the second option there, because I've been playing in the FFPC since the beginning, and in the first 3 or 4 years, it was definitely a learning curve. We tried avoiding the tight end position. I said, no, that's not the way to go. And then we had our what we called our Jimmy Graham team about 3 years ago, back when his last year as a Saint, and until he got hurt, we were doing fairly well. But the bottom line is that you put your eggs on one basket, and of course, anyone that drafted Rob Gronkowski knows that was not a good idea last year. So I actually prefer to grab somebody like our 2 teams last year, I believe, had Greg Olsen, we had on one of them, and then the other one, we kind of waited a little bit longer on a tight end, but then we took a little bit of upside and thought that maybe Jimmy Graham might rebound and grabbed him, and of course it panned out pretty good for both of the tight ends. But I do try and grab 2 tight ends probably no later than round 8 or 9 in the FFPC, if at all possible. That 1.5 PPR is really important. And if one goes down, you got to make sure you've got a good backup.
So next question is about the Jaguars. They're talking about having a 3-way split for carries among Fournette, Ivory, and Yeldon. So I have a 2-parter, maybe it's even a 3-parter. So are you buying this little split that they're talking about, and how are you handling the Jags running backs in the drafts? And then given that, how do you compare? This is like a college essay.
Yeah.
Compare and contrast Fournette, Dalvin Cook, McCaffrey, and is there anybody else you want to throw in the mix, Balky?
Mixon.
Let's throw Mixon in there too, all 4 of them.
That's a good point, because those are all the hot rookies that are being drafted early in the draft. Fournette, I started out a little bit lower. I'm usually conservative with rookie running backs, with the exception of Zeke. He was a special talent, and Fournette may still be special. I just recently moved him up. He looked pretty good in the game last night. But Chris Ivory is going to be used around the goal line in short yardage situations, and I believe probably they're going to start out with some kind of mix early in week 1, but as soon as Fournette breaks off a long run, it's probably going to go by the wayside. guy for the most part. The problem with Fournette in these drafts is that people are grabbing him in the second round as a number one running back, and I'm not buying that yet right now. As for Joe Mixon, I guess one of our questions later on was, are you avoiding any certain players early in their draft? And he's kind of it, because I really do think that Jeremy Hill and Giovanni Bernard are going to share that backfield a lot more heavier than maybe Fournette will in Jacksonville. The guy I really like right now is Dalvin Cook. And I just drafted him in one of my leagues as a number 2 running back, I believe, in the 4th round. I think in Minnesota, Latavius Murray is more of a plotter. Yes, he's off the pup now. He's practicing. He's probably going to end up being used in short yardage situations around the goal. He was doing that well in Oakland. But Dalvin Cook, just by the game that he had last night, is dynamic. 4 catches, 30 yards there. Broke off a couple of decent runs there. Very early, the coaches love him there. I think he's going to be more of a bell cow there than the other 2 immediately in the system here in Minnesota. And McCaffrey, I like overall. He's more of a pass catching guy. Jonathan Stewart's still going to be the starter there, get most of the carries there, get around the goal line. It's going to be kind of a mix here and there. But in any kind of situation where you got PPR, McCaffrey's going to have a good value.
I'm curious, Mike, and we're talking with Mike Nazarek from FFMastermind.com. Follow him on Twitter at FFMastermind. When you look at the Panthers running backs this year, just give me an idea of who you're more likely to draft between McCaffrey and Stewart. McCaffrey currently going at the 403 in FFPC drafts, and Jonathan Stewart not being selected until the middle of the 11th, the 1105. Which guy are you more likely to draft at their current draft points?
More likely probably McCaffrey, but I don't think I'd go that early on him. I'm not that hot on him. At that point, I would grab Dalvin Cook in a second. As for Jonathan Stewart, the problem with him is that if he doesn't score, you're looking at probably 60, 70 yards. He doesn't even average a catch a game, and then he gets hurt too. And if he gets hurt, then McCaffrey's basically got everything in the backfield there. So I'm not surprised that he's going real late in these drafts. I mean, I might grab him in the, 14th, 15th round or something like that. But I think that there are other guys in the league that have more upside at that point at the running back position than Jonathan Stewart.
Mike, we got our first look at the Packers backfield, the retooled Packers backfield this past week in the preseason. Gone are Eddie Lacy, James Starks, and Don Jackson. Now we have Ty Montgomery, we have Jamal Williams, we have Devontae Mays, Aaron Jones all back there. Ty Montgomery obviously is the hot name there since he looks to be the starter right now in Green Bay. He obviously started their first preseason game. Didn't do all that hot. 3 carries, no yards, including a fumble. He's
sucks.
Yeah, not great. He is still rising up draft boards right now. In fact, if you look at the FFPC ADP over the last 5 days.
He might have ran into a wall after last night.
Well, he might have. But over the last 5 days, he was still going at the 401, and we'll have to see what happens, after there's been a couple more days of drafts after this preseason game. But Montgomery going at the 401 right now. Are you going to be selecting him at the end of the 3rd, early 4th at his current price tag right now, Mike?
No. And I say that because, not only did I get him really late last year, I got him as a wide receiver, of course, and now he became a running back, but he's not really a running back. He's still learning the position. Jamal Williams has got a lot of talent there, and I wouldn't be surprised at some point, fairly early in the season, that Jamal kind of takes over that position. I'm just not buying Ty Montgomery right now.
Let's get to a couple of emails here for you tonight, Mike, from listeners who wanted to get your expert opinion. The first one is from Jerry in Columbia, South Carolina. He writes, should Terrence West be one of my targets this year if I go 0 RB? Thanks so much, Mike. Thank you for the email, Jerry in Columbia, South Carolina. So Terrence West right now, Mike, going at the 809 in FFPC drafts. Obviously, if you're going 0 RB, you're probably not taking West as your number 1 running back, but certainly a guy that you could get maybe as your number 2 or 3 if you load up on receivers and tight ends early. Is Terrence West a good 0 RB target for you this season?
I'd probably have to agree with that, although you're talking to a former stud running back believer, and, it's kind of come back in vogue here. I find myself drafting more two running backs in the first 2 or 3 rounds in all these drafts. But if I were to go 0 running back, yeah, definitely Terrence West would be on my list, probably as the number 2 or number 3 there, only because, Kenneth Dixon's out for the year there. Buck Allen hasn't really done much. The coaches like Terrence Williams. He played last night. He scored. They like him there. I'm a little concerned about Joe Flacco's back. But, Terrence West probably going to see the majority of the touches there, and he's going to catch some passes too, although, of course, Danny Woodhead is going to catch the majority of the passes. But we're talking 8th or 9th round here. Probably Terrence value is pretty good value at that point in the draft.
I'm curious, Mike, because you have been on the show. You've championed the, getting those stud running backs early, and it's definitely, obviously, it's worked out for you. You look at what you've done in the main event over the last few years. You look at what you've done in pros versus Joes, and certainly with the running back revival that we're seeing this year, there are fewer teams going 0 RB. I'm just curious if you've ever tried, implemented that strategy in the FFPC or any, expert leagues you've been in, and how it's worked out for you, because we haven't heard you talk a whole lot about that strategy, and I don't think that you're a huge believer in it.
No, I am not a believer in it. I think I have gone wide receiver, and then running back. I can't remember a time when I actually went wide receiver, tight end, and then running back. I just always like to have that sure thing at running back. And I remember last year my co-manager Gil and I were discussing. We had, I think, the 3rd or 4th pick there, and of course the first couple of picks were all wide receivers, Antonio Brown, OBJ, and such. And it got to the point of the draft, and I'm like, what are we going to do here? DeAndre Hopkins? I'm not quite sure about that. Or David Johnson? And I said, come on, what are we doing here? We got to grab David Johnson. I know he's only done this for less than a season. But I had this situation probably about 3 expert leagues, and then, of course, in the one main event team, the other one we weren't in a position to grab him, and grabbed Dave Johnson across the board, all but in one. And in one in the expert, I took Dez Bryant, and it was like the 8th or 9th pick of the first round, and of course I regretted it. That team ended up something like 5-9. I made the playoffs and with every other team that I had David Johnson on, and it's not a mistake. These guys are on the field. They're special. He's a special player, and fortunately you've got guys now. There's a larger group than there has been in the last year or two of good, solid running backs that are healthy and are not suspended outside of Zeke Elliott. Now you got to take him off the list. But if these guys slide to you in the 2nd round and all, I don't have a problem, especially if you're drafted late in the 1st round going running back. I think it's it can be a winning strategy.
Yeah, and I think about some of those running backs in FFPC drafts that are going at that turn. You think of Devontae Freeman, you think of Melvin Gordon, and I think if Jay Ajayi shows that he is over this concussion as we get in, later in the preseason, I think he's going to creep back up from the, mid to late 2nd round back up to that early 2nd round area where he was before. So there definitely is a trio of running backs there. And don't forget about Jordan Howard and Todd Gurley, who are hanging out right there too. So if you want to go running back early in your drafts, Dave, at the end of that 1st round, it's certainly definitely a way to go with those running backs there. How do you see yourself, Dave Gerczak, Dizzle, treating a late 1st round pick this year?
It just depends on who's there, but I might actually go 0 RB in some drafts because I think that the pendulum is swinging a little bit far back towards the running backs a little bit. So I might
the anti.
Kind of, yeah. I might do that, but it depends on who's there. I mean, I'm sure there'll be. What I've traditionally done is gone running back, wide receiver, or vice versa, and just left myself open and flexible in the 3rd and 4th rounds. Not always, but just a lot of times it works out that way. A lot of my favorite teams have worked out, and my teams that have done the best have been where you're kind of splitting between the 2 positions.
That is excellent analysis from the Dizzle, even better analysis from Michael Nazarek, and just me hanging out, talking to the 2 geniuses. We have much more coming up right after this. We've got to get to a break. You are listening to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. Eric Balkman, Dave Gerczak, and Michael Nazarek right here on the Fantasy Sports Radio Network. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour rolls on here with Eric Balkman, Dave Gerczak, and the FF Mastermind, Michael Nazarek, hanging out with us tonight on the Fantasy Sports Radio Network. Dave, you have a point you'd like to make?
Well, let me ask you a question. I've always called you Mike Nazarek. You used that for so long. Have you decided to, grow up? Your wife's like, it's time to grow up. We're going to use your full name now.
Well, let's see. My mother used to call me Michael when I was a little kid, and that usually had a negative connotation. Michael. So I'm cool. I'm cool with either version, Mike or Michael.
Okay. And people may know this, but I've switched my signature on my emails to David A. Gerczak.
We talked about this on the show before.
We did talk about it on the show before. I'm telling Michael this now.
Yeah.
To use your full name makes you seem smarter. So I use the full name so people, and it's funny. People are more respectful, I think, when they respond to my emails. Oh, David, yes. Oh, sure, we'll take care of it.
I think it's because they think you're British. Because, like, if you say Dave, oh, he's an American.
Yeah.
Oh,
David.
It's not Dave Beckham. It's David Beckham,
Respect.
Respect, indeed.
I mean, it wasn't King Dave in the Bible.
Exactly. That's
it's not Dave.
Yeah. It's Super Dave Osborne. Who shows that guy respect?
Oh,
no one.
Super Dave was on. We've been watching Curb Your Enthusiasm. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Super Dave is so great. Anyway, sorry.
Sorry,
Michael.
He is fantastic. Let's get to another email here for you, Mike. And it's interesting that your previous answer on how you treat, we were talking about zero RB and how you've assembled your teams early on. This kind of dovetails nicely into this question from Chris in Miami, Florida. He writes, hey, Mastermind, if the value ever dictated it, would you ever consider starting off an FFPC draft with 4 straight running backs or 4 running backs in your first 5 picks? Thank you for the email, Chris in Miami. And for anybody who is not familiar, you start in the FFPC, a quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, a tight end, kicker, defense, and then 2 flexes. So if you want to start 4 receivers, you could. If you want to start 3 tight ends, you could. If you wanted to start 4 running backs, you could as well. The robust running back strategy, I believe, is how Matt Friedman at Matt F. the Oracle on Twitter from RotoViz, he coined it. I'm just curious, Mike, knowing your penchant for those stud running backs early, have you ever considered or have you ever started off a draft with 4 running backs in the first 5 rounds?
Well, back in the day, and we're talking back in the 90s when the stud running backs were, galore, and we had a list of like at least 20 of them in the league, and people were like, what's RBBC? And they, of course, I would draft 3 or 4 straight running backs, and it got me a lot of titles. But the advent of PPR changed a lot of that, and of course in the FFPC it's 0.5 for PPR for tight ends. So it would have to be a unique situation where a certain player really slid to me in the 3rd round. I can see going running back. In fact, that's what I did the first 2 for Pros versus Joes with the 10th pick. I went Melvin Gordon and Devonta Freeman. But the next 2 picks, I was looking at a wide receiver and either wide receiver or tight end. I just, it's very tough to do that because I think you're giving up so much at value at the wide receiver position that I always like to have at least one guy that's consistently going to produce at the wide receiver position, in addition to having guys at the running back position. And if you go something like that, also you're avoiding the tight ends completely. The top 5, 6, 7 tight ends, especially if you go running back 4 straight 4. And then you're in the 5th round, and if you're in a late, if you got a late draft pick, you're talking 5'10", 5'11". I mean, what kind of wide receivers and tight ends are left there to be your number 1 at that position? I don't think that's under your current scoring system. I don't think that's wise to do.
Yeah, it'd be tough for me to do that. You make a great point, Mike, because your running backs would be such a strength on your team, but you can't take a tight end until round 5 or round 6. Which actually it could work out if you wanted to have 2 tight ends by the end of round 9 or round 8 or round 9. But then receiver, man, you got to hit on those receivers, because if you miss on those receivers, you are going to be plugging in some pretty subpar options week after week into your lineup. So it's got to be, like you said, a perfect storm of value for you to do that. Dave, go ahead.
All right, this is one of our favorite questions as we come close to the end of the interview. Who is an early round pick that you will not have on any of your teams this year, and a late round sleeper that you were trying to target in all of your leagues?
Well, I've already mentioned the first one is Joe Mixon, because he's just going too darn early. People are grabbing him either in the 2nd or even 3rd round of these drafts. I think there's more of a RBBC there. I like the kid. He's talented and all, but Jeremy Hill is very good at the goal line there. And then Giovanni Bernard has looked good in camp. So I just think he's overrated right there. Late, kind of a little bit later in the draft, not near the very end, but we talked about Ty Montgomery. I'm not sold on him. I like Jamal Williams. I've been trying to grab him as my 4 or 5 running back there. I think there's good value and a good potential upside there. At wide receiver, I think Devin Funchess. He was hyped so much last year, didn't do much. And Ted Ginn's not there anymore, and Brenton Burnson, come on, So Funchess is starting. opposite Kelvin Benjamin, who looked good the other night. And but I think that Funchess has a chance there to make a pretty good impact as a receiver there, starting receiver for the Panthers. If you can get him in round 17, 18, 19, I think it's good value.
He's again. I don't know why I get confused because I was all over Funchess. This is his third year ball. Keith? Is it third?
Yeah, I believe.
So it's so funny
year,
because he was such a young player coming out of Michigan, and we were like expecting a second year breakout, which is kind of foolish. I think we did actually last year we did talk about it a little bit. Like maybe we were saying like, no, don't expect it really the second year because he's so young still.
Yeah, I mean he's younger than some of the rookies that came into the league this year.
Right. He's Calvin's size.
He's big, and remember when he was in college too. He was playing a lot of tight end at Michigan. He wasn't exclusively at receiver. And when you're transitioning from college to the pros, it's hard enough when you're staying at the same position. But when he was so used to playing so much tight end for Michigan, and then he tried to be a full-time receiver in the pros, it's very, very difficult to make that transition. I'm with you, Mike. This is a guy that I'm looking at late. He is going at the 16.02 in drafts right now. He actually has risen a little bit. If you would have, talked about Devin Funchess, 3 weeks ago, he was probably going in the 19th, 20th rounds or sometimes not at all. He is on the radar right now, and certainly you can do a lot worse than spending a pick on Funchess, a guy who has a lot of upside there. So I am totally with you on that sleeper. Hey, Mike, for anybody who is not familiar with FFMastermind.com, they haven't subscribed, they're thinking about subscribing. Tell them, in addition to all your history, your resume of winning these high stakes leagues, doing so good in pros versus Joes.
Yeah, do you help other people do well?
Yeah, you obviously are willing to let other people in on the info that you have. Tell everybody about FFMastermind.com.
Well, we've been on I can't believe we've been on the 22 years. One of the few sites have been around that long. I do this full time. I really put a lot of work and effort into developing the projections and also considering the different draft strategies for all these different types of leagues, PPR, non-PPR, dynasty, quarterback heavy and such. We have the traditional draft guide, and we're updating it every week. And I did rankings update, of course, today because of all the news that happened. We just finished the update last night. I think what also separates us from a lot of people is that a lot of my subscribers actually know me. They call me, they email me or whatnot, and I'm not going to ignore them. We don't have 20 or 30,000 subscribers. We've got a few thousand. Most people are very loyal, been with us, 5-10 years. I'll help them. I send them an email. I'm here for an experienced opinion. I want to help them win. We do the weekly newsletter during the season. I've got a podcast that I do, of course, every Tuesday night. It's only half hour, but we have fun with that. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that we just redid our website. We just brand new website, new server, A+ security on it. It's totally responsive now to smartphones, tablets, iPads. You can go on it on your phone, and it'll shrink down to one column. You can log in and check out all the premium information on your phone and all. So I'm doing what I can, of course, to get the millennial business out there. But a lot of my customers are a little bit older, like myself. I can't believe it. I started the website when I was 29 or 30. I'm 51 now, 22 years later. But it's great to do what I do for a living and have a fun time with it. And before I go here, I do want to let you guys know that I'm offering a special discount. Anyone that hears this, okay, Super Bowl package is all of our services. That's the guide, the updated rankings, the emails, the injury updates, the weekly newsletters, and our drafting software. It's normally $56.95 on the site. And if you use the discount code FFPC7, the number 7, you can get $7 off. That'll bring it down below $50 for you. It's 12% off. It's the least I could do for you and your listeners there. I've been playing in the FFPC since the inception of your event. I love the event. It's the only high-stakes fantasy contest that I play in. I play in your satellite leagues. I play multiple teams in the main event. We have a great time. I live right here in the Vegas area, so we always come down and draft a live team, in the ballroom and everything, and come for the viewing party and all. Have a blast. I've been meeting more of my subscribers lately at these events. It's like a big family. I mean, this is personal. This is my life. This is what I do for a living. I love what I'm doing. I'm very fortunate I'm able to do that. I just want to give back to the people that help me and enable me to do that. And just come to FFMastermind.com. Check it out.
That was an amazing testimonial. FFPC7 is the discount code. You get $7 off. By the way, so speaking of giving back, you're a lifetime veteran. We're giving you spent, I mean, I know you've won a few teams, but you spent some money with us. We're giving back to you and Gil. Is Gil going to be there as well?
Yes, he is. He always comes in, stays in my guest room here, and we can come on down for the draft. We'll be there for the viewing party and then for the draft Friday night and drafting online Saturday. And we're drafting a couple of satellites right before the event, and we're really excited.
So we're giving back to you all the money you spent over the years. We're giving only for people who've played for all 10 years. We're giving you a free T-shirt.
There you go, Mike.
You're welcome. We spent $9 on it. It says 10-year veteran or some crap, but hope you enjoy it. Use it to wax your car if you don't like it.
Mike, listen, thanks so much for hanging out with us tonight. We certainly appreciate it. Follow you on Twitter at FFMastermind, and we'll talk to you again soon, man.
Hey, I appreciate it, guys. The wife loves T-shirts, so she's going to be wearing that. We've got a couple of sweatshirts. She wears the sweatshirts all the time. We go to the store and everything. People ask, what's FFPC? I say, hey, it's the best high-stakes league around if you play fantasy.
Awesome. Mike Nazarek from FFMastermind.com. Mike, be good. We'll talk to you again soon.
Okay, take care, guys.
Michael Nazarek on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour tonight.
Michael Nazarek.
Michael Nazarek.
Right, I like that. I love it.
Yes.
I respect him so much more now.
Good. I'm glad. And we'll be right back after this on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. HSFF Hour rolls on here, a mid-August episode. It is coming up on High Stakes Draft Time. Well, it has been High Stakes Draft Time for some time now since we launched the Football Guys Players Championship in early June. Leagues going off there every single day. Of course, satellites, live dynasties, much more. Best balls, 100% payout best balls available at myffpc.com. Of course, the main event coming up. If you have not gotten your discounted room at Planet Hollywood, we certainly encourage you to get that. Go to myffpc.com. All the details on there. Contact our live events host, Greg Sidoris, LVCH777 at AOL.com. He'll get you the code. He'll get you hooked up, and he'll save you some money.
I talked to Greg this week. Greg has a good radio voice.
Greg Sidoris? Yeah, he does.
Talking to me?
Yeah.
Hey, it's Greg Sidoris.
Yeah.
I'm like, what's with the porno voice, Greg? This is how I normally talk.
Yeah, Las Vegas casino host, man.
That's great. He could just talk in those sultry tones for days.
Yeah, he definitely could.
And actually, he sometimes does ramble on a bit.
Dave, put your pants back on. This is ridiculous.
He talks a bit.
It's a professional show here tonight. So a lot of great stuff there before the break from Michael Nazarek from FFMastermind.com. I want to remind everybody to go to FFMastermind.com. Use the discount code FFPC7 so you can get that discounted rate on his Super Bowl package. And for sure, check out the FF Mastermind Quick Bits app, which is free in the App Store for both
is it really?
Android, yes, Android and your iOS service.
I'm going to do that right now while you're talking.
Do it. FF Mastermind on Twitter. And the podcast comes out every Tuesday. Usually Mike and Chris Rito, another writer for FFMastermind.com. That is blogtalkradio.com/fantasy_football_mastermind. You can also get it in the iTunes podcast store as well. So a lot of great stuff there. It is the definitive fantasy football information service, FFMastermind.com. We are not through. That was just our first guest tonight. We're very excited to have Michael Nazarek on. Coming up later on, we have Ferrell, Elliott. We have Alex Kaganovsky from the FFPC, co-founder, going to talk about his prop bets that he made in Las Vegas as he wasn't a location scout, but he went out to Vegas this week get some stuff ready for the live event, make sure that when all the players are coming out there, you guys will be ready to go. You won't have to deal with any nonsense.
All that. That's amazing. He does a great job.
Does a great job for sure. Ferrell Elliott doing a great job with the KFFSC. We have not very much further, and we'll be in Louisville drafting our teams there. We have our Kentucky preview show coming up at next Friday, a week from today, which you will not be on. But
so then the following week, then are we broadcasting live in Kentucky?
Broadcasting live at the Horseshoe Casino in Louisville, Kentucky, and that will be our final, quote-unquote, final live episode before.
So I'm going to miss the penultimate episode.
You will miss in classic Gerzak fashion, you will miss the penultimate episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour.
I keep interrupting you, but so that will so what time is that one going to be at? How long is it?
Yeah, it's going to be our normal 2-hour show that we do with the commercials. If you're listening live, it'll just be 90 minutes. But we will be starting that one, I believe, at 5:30. I'm thinking about this here. No, 6:30 Eastern time.
Right.
So 6:30 Eastern.
We're Central, so it's really tough for us to add the hour.
Yeah.
To figure that. I mean, it's just the
I was
math.
told there would be no math.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that's coming up too. A couple of things I want to touch on with what Michael Nazarek was talking to us about. He likes to get those 2 tight ends in the FFPC
that's nice.
by the end of the 8th or 9th round. And I feel like, I actually did my first tight end premium league this year that I'm actually in, and that's sort of what I tried to do as well. I think I had 2 tight ends.
You feel pretty good about your team then, probably, right?
Yeah.
You always do.
I got Jimmy Graham in the 5th, and then I took Austin Hooper in the 9th.
Tight end premium?
Tight end premium at 502. So, I mean, it was kind of like...
That's pretty... Dude, he's
still,
going to the 3rd round in
the thing is, you have to start 3 receivers in this league. So there was a lot of people after the receivers.
All right, gotcha.
And then my third
Still a
one,
good deal.
I got A.J. Derby real late, who I really like this year as well. A.J. Derby, Denver, until Jake Butt recovers from his ACL, and then he'll be...
He's not doing anything this year.
And then... great idea. Target the Packers pass catchers. And it worked out for him last year. I think you look for these pockets of fantasy goodness. You hear Wayne Ellis talk about it all the time. We'll hear him talk about it in Kentucky. You identify those pockets, especially in DE formats like the Pros versus Joes. You definitely will be well on your way to hopefully doing very well in your drafts. We got to get to a break as we close to the top of the hour here. When we come back, Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship Commissioner Ferrell Elliott going to talk about news and emails. Eric Balkman, Dave Gerzak, right here on the HSFF Hour on the Fantasy Sports Radio Network. Welcome into hour number 2 of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. I am Eric Balkman at Eric Balkman on Twitter. He is Dave Gerzak at The Dizzle on Twitter. I'm just kidding. He's at David Gerzak on Twitter. He should be at The Dizzle on Twitter. We are the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. Had a great first hour this week with Michael Nazarek coming on talking about everything FFMastermind has to offer. Use that discount code FFPC7 so you can get his discounted Super Bowl package just exclusively for High Stakes Fantasy Football listeners and FFPC players.
Got some good stuff in there, really good.
Yeah, so and definitely go back and listen to that, on any of the streams that we have available. I'm not going to repeat them all. Anywhere you can find podcasts, you'll probably find the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. So great stuff there, and we have Ferrell Elliott coming up in a little bit to talk about all the goings-on that we had today in the NFL. Ezekiel Elliott gets suspended for 6 games. Jordan Matthews traded to the Buffalo Bills. And Sammy Watkins shipped to L.A. He will be playing for the Rams this year. Dave, I didn't get your take on the Watkins, because we were working at the office today. I was shocked that Watkins was traded to the Rams. You didn't seem you were certainly surprised, but for you, I don't think that you were all that shocked. Does that mean that you don't view his fantasy value changing much?
I do actually, because I don't believe in. Okay, there's probably like a 70% chance Jared Goff's going to suck this year, which means there's a 70% chance Watkins is going to suck this year. So then if you get the 30% that Goff's going to be somewhat productive, now you still have the 40% chance that Watkins will get hurt. So you have probably an 18% chance that Watkins will be pretty good. Speaking of the math, 30 times 0.6, 3 times, throwing 3 times 0.6, 18%.
There's a lot of variables there. I was talking to one of my friends today, and he knows I like Tyrod Taylor. I draft Tyrod Taylor a lot, and I talked to him last week about it. And I said how I liked Tyrod Taylor this year, and then he emailed me again today. He said, "Hey, you still like Taylor?" And the simple, short answer is, yeah, I still do like Taylor, because you look at what he did even without Watkins last year. He was still putting up numbers. He still puts up numbers with his legs. I mean, that's, quasi-receiver independent, no matter who's out there. I've always liked Jordan Matthews for the value that he offers. And this guy catches 60 balls every single year. And the fact that he's going so late today, we didn't talk about this when we were talking about to Mike Nazarek before, but in the Football Guys Players Championship draft, one of the drafts that went off today, after all this happened, you had Watkins going in the early 5th, Ezekiel Elliott slipped to the 111, and Jordan Matthews didn't go until the 10-10. And he was going at the 11:04 before this. I still think that's really good value for Jordan Matthews.
So Elliott went at the 111 still?
Yes.
When someone posted in the chat room, I think it was Wayne Ellis said 204 is where he's
204, yep. Wayne
that's
said
pretty
that.
Early still. Dude, that's really pretty early for Elliott.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, if you miss out on McFadden or you miss out on Morris or whoever, you got to get some running back to plug in there for the first month.
That's true. I mean, Jacquez Rodgers is a good candidate for that. But I mean, McFadden is just not he's
Yeah, you don't like McFadden.
I don't like McFadden. I mean, he's just not productive anytime he gets a chance ever since, I don't even know when. I mean, it's been forever. He's just not good.
Yeah.
You put him in there, and he sucks.
He had that one really good year, didn't he?
Yeah, he had a good year, and I remember
Kimbrel took
him at like the 7 or 8 pick.
Yeah.
The year after. And, I mean, she may have taken him the year before, and it didn't work out for her. But I remember, I'm like, wow, you're really liking McFadden. She's like, yeah. And it's like, and then he just hasn't done anything.
Yeah. It's you're rolling the dice.
Hate him.
Offensive line in Dallas too.
The offensive line is fantastic.
But it's not. I don't think it's as good as it was last year.
It's true. They lost 2 starters.
Something to keep in mind. We have to get to a break. When we come back, I promise you, Ferrell Elliott, the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship Commissioner, will come on and wow us all on the HSFF Hour on the Fantasy Sports Radio Network. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is on the Fantasy Sports Radio Network. You are listening to me, Eric Balkman, and him, Dave Gerzak, here. And we want to bring in our next guest here tonight, ladies and gentlemen. He is a longtime NFL player agent that also represents musicians like Frederick the Younger, the Quiet Hollers, Kristen Diablo, and much, much more. He is also the commissioner of the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship, an event in its 16th year that has expanded to other states and countries, and is taking registrations for both online drafts and live drafts in Cincinnati and Louisville. You hear him on the Kentucky Fantasy Football podcast that he hosts with KFFSC player Rob Fetcher, and you know him as the unofficial third host of this show. My pleasure to welcome back into the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, Commissioner Ferrell Elliott. Welcome back to the show, man.
I may be the unofficial. Hey, buddy, how are you, Dave? I may be the unofficial host, but I am the intimidated guest tonight. First, you got me following some guy called the Mastermind, and I understand the gentleman Alex from New York is coming up, and Dave's in the studio. What in the world can I tell you about, Balky?
I'm just telling you, Ferrell, that's all true, but everybody came to listen to you tonight. And that's no joke. I want to, before we get into it with you tonight, Cincinnati, I believe, is full, but online main events still open, and obviously the Louisville main event still wide open, right?
Online main event still open since I learned how to since I finally broke down and bought a laptop. We might be able to sell some a little quicker, but right now we're still online. We still have openings. Sunday night is sold out, but we have 9 other online main events to go. Yeah, it's Cincinnati, 60 drafters. It's going to be a lot of fun. And we still have openings live in Louisville. If anyone would like to make a last-minute decision to make the trip down here, we've still got another week to register. And I was at the casino today working with the girls, guys. We've got a few surprises for you this year. So, yeah, I'm ready for Team Wisconsin to make the drive south that I just made.
Yeah, it was awesome, Ferrell. We got to see you this past weekend for the Mile of Music here in Appleton, Wisconsin. Had a lot of your acts up here. I took them in. They were great, as always. Great to see you. And, of course, Jesse Bumstead was up here as well. Awesome to see him. It's very exciting that you know, in essentially 1 month out of the year, it's the only time we get to see each other. You come up and visit us in Appleton. We come down and visit you in Louisville, and then we all meet out in Vegas in September.
Well, those are our officials, and we're going to have some unofficials, too. Remember, we tried to have an unofficial for a Packer game this last year, and it just didn't work out. But I do have video of you dancing in a snowstorm, so I was glad you guys made that game.
Yeah, Ferrell, you couldn't be there, but it was a great time for sure, as my dancing can attest to. Let's get into some news that obviously we got.
Talking about more fantasy.
Yeah, we going to get
to talk.
There's plenty of news to get into, and Ferrell, I got to get your opinion on the big stuff that happened today. Right up at the top, we talked about Ezekiel Elliott being suspended for 6 games. How are you treating him in your drafts right now? What's the proper spot to take Elliott, or are you avoiding him entirely?
Well, the proper spot, I think, is much later, 4th round. You know, Kimra won a big league last year when Bell fell to her in the 3rd, and Bell missed how many games? Was it 2, 3? And 2. So, you know, I think it's going to be yeah, and there's naturally a huge drop-off, you know, behind this player in Dallas, and it just affects everything going on with the Cowboys. You know, there's no great legal issues here. I've talked to 3 attorneys, 2 of them player agents today, endless conversations. One of them I couldn't get off the phone, and I didn't know any more than when they called me. It's the commissioner. The commissioner is deciding to protect the shield, and it's. I will say this: I talked to an agent that was out with some of his clients in Thousand Oaks with the Cowboys, and Ezekiel was just, he was down, he was quiet, he was very reserved. This has been a real weight on him. Now the decision's made. They'll fight it, they'll appeal it, but there's no clear appeal process. You appeal to the commissioner who's already made the decision. So we'll see what path. I'm just going to miss him. I think he's a wonderful player. I think Dallas is an exciting team. I don't want to see this player sitting on the sidelines for 6 weeks, and I wish we could find some other way to deal with players and the conduct detrimental to the league. And what breaks an agent's heart is, he's suspended without pay.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, he's got to kill you.
You got to get out the violin, Dave.
That affects your wallet. Honestly, the funny thing is like I feel like the agent should still get paid, like even if the player's an idiot.
Yeah, like the agent committed no crime, or maybe.
Well,
Elliott
you're in partnership.
Either,
you're in partnership with the player, guys. So that's how.
Maybe
that goes.
Would you think like if Elliott would wear a sandwich board around that just said "I beat my woman"?
Well, we don't want that.
Something like that, like Bruce Willis in one of those diaries.
Well, he would rather. He would rather do
sure
that.
He would. Sure he would.
What he's
I'm a
dealing
complete
with right
moron.
now.
I'm a complete moron.
Ferrell, I think the important thing to take away from this is you are a player agent, and obviously much more on the inside than either Dave or Dave or me is. But the thing that we take away from this is, listen, he's been suspended 6 games. The NFL is capable of anything. They could reduce suspension by 1 game, 2 games, all of it. None of it. I mean, we have no idea. There's no real insight to glean,
exactly.
and it's probably a fool's errand trying to project, how the suspension could change over the next couple of weeks.
It is, and I had dynasty guys that started texting me immediately, telling me they have both backups. They have the other backup. I said, fellas, I don't know if those backups are going to do you any good. I don't even know if those guys are going to be the guy that plays if and when he's gone. So, yeah, speculation it all is. But if Dallas starts the season without him, it makes it very interesting on what the quarterback's going to have to do to make that team win. And that game that we've been looking forward to all year long, the Giants and the Cowboys to start the season, begins to look very different.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely does. We'll have to that'll be something to pay attention to as far as Week 1 fantasy goes, too. Ferrell, big news out of Dallas we already talked about. There was also big news out of Buffalo today, as Buffalo has shipped Sammy Watkins to the Rams, and Jordan Matthews comes from Philadelphia to Buffalo. Talk a little bit about, just your immediate reaction to how Watkins and Matthews' value changes with their new teams.
There was no passion for Watkins for him to stay in Buffalo. Nobody was pushing towards a deal. He brings a different – I just don't know what we've seen from that quarterback. Fantasy players are writing him off, and I really – the maturation project and projections of this quarterback, he has nowhere to go but up, and now he's got a tool to take him there. He's got a very interesting draft pick as the slot receiver, Cooper Kupp coming in. They've still got the gizmo receiver with Austin out there. So we'll just have to see. I think the potential for upside is there. I like it a little better than Dave's 30%. In Buffalo, it's a ho-hum move to me, although I think some people will see Matthews catching 75 to 80 balls. When and how is a different type of thing. It's not a weekly because of the inconsistent quarterback at Buffalo and the different game scripts. It's not a weekly thing that I want to make him put Matthews in my lineup every week. But I never have been high on this player as some fantasy guys have.
He will be playing opposite, or you'd think he'd be in the slot, maybe with Zay Jones on the outside, or playing more outside receiver. But the other big receiver that Buffalo added this week was Anquan Bolden. 1 year, $2.75 million. You look at what Bolden has been able to do. He's seemingly like another timeless receiver, just goes out there and catches passes. Ferrell, you look at Anquan Bolden this year in a Buffalo Bills uniform catching passes for Tyrod Taylor. Currently, this is basically all the drafts that we have the data for. This is after the Bills signed him. Still going in the 17th round. To me, that's still a value there for Bolden.
That's a steal. I don't care if he is 37 years old. He caught almost 70 balls last year, and he's the better choice for a consistent receiver, especially down around the goal line. I hope he's going that late by the time I get to Las Vegas and draft my teams.
Ferrell, we're talking with Ferrell Elliott, the commissioner of the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship. Register today at KFFSC.com. Still plenty of spots available online and at the Louisville main event. Some ancillary stuff there, too. Definitely check that out. Ferrell, I'm going to give you roughly 45 seconds here before we take our next break. Talk a little bit about Kenny Golladay, because he has been wowing people in Detroit practices, and I feel like this is a guy that you've been on so far this year.
Yeah, I've been on him because I met him last year at Pro Day. I really like him. When he starts moving vertically, making people miss, you're going to even get more excited. 6'4", 220 pounds. I love him, and he's from Chicago, Illinois. Let a player do well in the league that's not from Florida for once. It's one of Johnny Rozak's boys from Chicago, Illinois. North Dakota to Northern Illinois to the NFL. I think he's going to be a big player in Detroit.
Yeah. Kenny Golladay, definitely a guy to watch out for, even as a rookie, making some plays in preseason. Pay attention to him as a late-round flyer. We have much more with Ferrell Elliott and Dave Gerzak coming up right after this on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour on the Fantasy Sports Radio Network. Ferrell Elliott from the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship joins the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour this week. Eric Balkman, Dave Gerzak coming at you. We're talking about the news around the NFL. We touched on the big stuff today, getting into some other stuff. And one of the storylines that continues to be a thing for fantasy owners that they need to pay attention to. Andrew Luck, no timeline to begin practicing, according to Chuck Pagano. This was an ESPN.com report that came out today. Ferrell, Andrew Luck is the guy that drives that Colts offense. What are we doing with Hilton, Moncrief, and Gore and the rest of it? How are you treating Colts this year with no timetable on Andrew Luck?
Dave Gerzak was the one that put that first in my mind, and yeah, you've got to stay away from Hilton at where he's going. And I just don't like the way Luck is responding to the media about his injury. Here's a guy who's always a great interview, always in a situation to communicate and get his point across, and people ask him about his injury, and he begins a line of double talk that I've never seen come out of the guy's mouth. So I really...
He's off my board.
Yeah, exactly, and so are most of the Colts based on what you have to pay to get them.
Luck's off my board. I'm honestly, like, what are there's a chance that there's a complication. They have to redo the surgery. Boom, out for the season. Well, it's not that impossible.
Yeah, no, you're definitely right, and there's certainly a non-zero chance having that. But my question is, what's the upside in taking T.Y. Hilton here in the at the end, the mid to late second round?
You're paying Luck price.
You could still have, instead of Hilton, you could have Amari Cooper, you could have Des Bryant, Doug Baldwin,
Derek Carr, Zach, you're getting
Russell Wilson to Doug Baldwin. Tom Brady to Brandon Cooks. Yeah, exactly. Well, Tom Savage to DeAndre Hopkins. That's debatable.
Oh, that'll be Deshaun Watson in about a week.
Okay, well, and Watson's healthy. So I think that there's, again, like Ferrell said, there's not a ton of upside drafting Hilton right now when you can get all those other guys there. Ferrell, I don't want to – I think the only other thing I want to touch on, and this is kind of being underreported, maybe it's just because I'm just reading too much into it, but Mike Triplett from ESPN.com reported – this week, the Saints' newest depth chart, and Ted Ginn is actually listed as the number 2 receiver ahead of Willie Snead, and Snead is actually the number 3 there. And Snead was a guy that a lot of high-stakes owners were on, in the 6th, 7th round this year, and maybe in the 5th round now that he's been driven up a little bit more. But Snead should fall after this. You look at Ginn versus Snead there. Whoever is the number 2 receiver in New Orleans, there's certainly some fantasy goodness to be had there. How do you view those two players for 2017?
I love both of them. I think Snead being a number 3 receiver, what does it matter? There's 5,000 yards in Drew Brees' arm. And, the tight end is still iffy for even practice. So, I believe this is a slot receiver. Ginn's outside the numbers. I think they're two different kind of guys, and they've needed a speed merchant that's consistent. Ginn's this is his 11th year in the league. I couldn't believe that. 14 TDs in the last 2 years. If you can get 14 TDs with Cam Newton throwing you the ball, when 1 year you go to the Super Bowl and 1 year the offense falls apart, what can you do with Drew Brees? I think Ted Ginn is a wonderful value, and he's going to shoot up the boards. And we're going to see some of this in the preseason. We're going to get a buzz. The guys that have got him early in the football guys drafts they're in a mighty good position with Ted Ginn, I think.
That's why we always encourage drafting early. You can get values like this that can really help you be a league winner, if not maybe an overall contest winner. We'll have to see how Ted Ginn performs in the preseason, like Ferrell said. Ferrell, we've ignored the listeners long enough. Let's get to some emails here.
We actually take those?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Bill in Needham, Massachusetts leads things off tonight. Hello, Rich, Marshall, and Mooch. Which Ravens tight end are you targeting this year, or are you staying away from them altogether? Enjoy the preseason. That is Bill in Needham, Massachusetts. So, Ferrell, Ravens tight end. Last year is Dennis Pitta, and he caught 86 passes. We know that there are targets there to be had. What Ravens tight end do you like best this season?
None of them, and I'm beginning not to like anyone on the Ravens. Every day someone's injured. I'm waiting for Woodhead next because once he goes down offensively, we're in a hell of a mess. Watson is an attractive tight end. He's the wonderful gentleman of the league. I think there's some guys, that could be sleeping on him, but he hasn't played since week 3 of last year. This Baltimore thing is just a mess. And you talk about staying out of Indianapolis because of luck. Flacco's going to come in and start the season if he starts it on time. Hell, he always looks rusty to me. And this offense is not going to have a lot of consistency or vibe to it that suggests to me that it can get clicking. They were a weird team last year, and this just isn't starting in the right way.
Yeah, no Dennis Pitta, obviously, with the hip. You have Kenneth Dixon out for the year with his injury, and Joe Flacco. I mean, he's still out right now, and we saw what Ryan Mallett did in the first preseason game, and it wasn't good. So you look at guys who were sleeper receivers on this team. Mike Wallace, a lot of people like. Jeremy Maclin, a lot of people like. Even Brashad Perriman in the 13th, 14th round, people were taking chances on. And then we talked about with Michael Nazarek. We talked about Terrence West earlier. There is reason enough for me to stay away from these guys. Now, Ben Watson's not going until the 17th round, so if you do like to get your third FFPC tight end late or a fourth FFPC tight end, certainly Ben Watson represents a certain amount of upside there late. But I'm with Ferrell, man. I'm not targeting any of these guys. Dave, you look at the Baltimore offense this year, certainly not a lot to get excited about as we speak here in mid-August.
Yeah, it's a problem. I'll take a look at Woodhead and maybe Mike Wallace. I don't know.
Woodhead, to me, is as long as Ferrell didn't just jinx him, but as long as he stays healthy, man, he's a guy that could really have a very successful year in that offense with how much Baltimore throws to their running backs. Ferrell, next question here. This is Harry in Westland, Michigan. Hey, fellas, with Booker missing time, Charles not guaranteed to make the team or be effective. Is C.J. Anderson going too late in drafts right now? Anderson, thank you for the email, Harry. Anderson going at the 604. So, Ferrell, I feel like we've talked about C.J. Anderson before, and it seems like every time we bring him up on this show, he's going around later than he was before. Now he's going in the 6th round. Is there any fantasy value in the early 6th for C.J. Anderson?
I don't think so. This player's always been an enigma to me. He's never. You talk about, they're talking about more catches this year. He's going to be targeted more, and perhaps that's so. But you go back to the scouting combine. This player was very ordinary at the scouting combine, and he's flashed some in the NFL, and he's had some great players playing around him. I think we've seen the best football out of C.J. Anderson. I'm looking somewhere else, and I'm looking younger in the 6th and 7th round for a running back.
Ferrell, this next email I think you can provide some good insight on. This is Charlie in Las Cruces, New Mexico. He writes, DeAndre Hopkins doesn't seem to be getting lowered as much as Allen Robinson is this year, and Savage and Watson both look good this week. Are you guys drafting him in the second round this year? Thanks, gentlemen. That is Charlie in Las Cruces, New Mexico. So, Ferrell, you can use your Texans insight here as we look at Hopkins going currently at the 303 in FFPC drafts. You don't even necessarily have to take him in the second round. If you have a late second round pick, you can wait till that turn and take him in the early third. Your thoughts on Hopkins this year?
He's a steal in the third. He's got a completely different attitude. The holdout from last year is gone. You know, he's taking the company line about the quarterback Savage. Now that, based on what we saw a couple nights ago, that may just change with Watson there, but we'll have to see. Savage looked like a short passing game. Hopkins caught 2 passes, went to the sidelines. But right now, the team, they're cohesive on defense, offense, and special teams, and they've got to get this quarterback situation taken care of. Whatever quarterback plays, Hopkins is going to get his. It's a wise choice in the third round. And by the way, guys, Will Fuller, all you guys that love Fuller, what a camp he was having. Everybody shakes his head about this player not being there. And I'm curious where those receptions are going to go. But, man, he was in line, I think, for a heck of a year.
So, well, first of all, maybe C.J. Fedorowicz picks him up. Do you think that might be a possibility, Ferrell?
Yeah, he didn't play at all Wednesday night, so it was a little bit out of my mind. Griffin had a real good game. I think there's a lot of 21 personnel sets for this team, and so we're going to see both tight ends on the field, and Fedorowicz definitely gets his.
I mean, the linebackers, though, on that defense are just fantastic,
Monsters.
Right? I mean,
Monsters.
the best, right?
You know, first, second, and third string. Great linebackers.
No matter what string, yeah. That string is like a yo-yo. There's too much string.
Ferrell may or may not represent a player on the Texans. May or may not be Brian Peters, linebacker. So certainly best of luck to him this year. Ferrell, let's get to one more email here, and then we'll talk about what's going to happen next week on the show. West Texas's Roger. He literally lives in a city called West Texas. Are y'all worried about Alshon Jeffrey right now with his injury?
Jeffries?
No, Alshon Jeffrey with his injury, or does this present a good buying opportunity in drafts for him? Thanks to the email, Roger. Ferrell, Alshon Jeffrey at the 407. Yay or nay from you?
Roger, run to the border. Run away from Alshon Jeffrey. Injured. You know, I saw a calculation where in practice, in 7-on-7, Wentz has thrown close to 200 passes. 5 of them have gone to Alshon Jeffrey. There's no chemistry here, and I don't see these two getting together on the field anytime soon. I don't like what's happening here. It looks to me, and this bothers me in the business, but occasionally you see it, it looks to me like a player has got paid and is really not in any hurry to show it out on the field. So that may change as we get closer to the season, but I'm staying away from this. There's just too many other good receivers out there.
I'm with you, man. I'm finding a different way to spend a 4th-round pick. I don't think I'm going to have Alshon Jeffrey in any of my drafts this week. Ferrell, we follow you on Twitter at KFFFC. We are all going to go to KFFSC.com to make sure that we are filling up all those live and online events.
Yeah.
And you, my friend, did such a good job this week. You will be on co-hosting with me next week.
Wow, another day, another paycheck. I can't wait, guys.
Neither.
You get paid for this?
No, listen. We don't want to get into this on the show, but Ferrell, thanks so much.
Pay Alex is coming out. We'll find out in a second what's up.
Ferrell, we'll talk to you again real soon, buddy.
Thank you, guys. Have a great evening.
Thanks.
Ferrell Elliott on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. Another special guest coming up right after this on the Fantasy Sports Radio Network. Eric Balkman, Dave Gerzak, HSFF Hour here on the Fantasy Sports Radio Network. Great stuff, Dave, there from Ferrell Elliott before the break. Can't wait to have him on next week, co-host, and I'll tell you who the other co-host is next week.
You have 2?
It's going to be 2 co-hosts, and it's going to be fantastic.
You need 2 people to replace me.
Yeah,
you finally you admit it.
Well, listen, I think I've admitted it before, but it's more like
it takes 2 people.
No, it doesn't take 2 people. It takes 2 people to make up for all the dreck that you had spewed on the airwaves in previous weeks. Speaking of, no, absolutely not. So great stuff there from Ferrell, Elliott. I want to get to our next guest right now, and I'm going to bring him in. He's tonight's final guest.
Do you need a sheet of paper to introduce Alex?
Well, listen. This is
unbelievable.
This is great stuff here. I want to welcome in. He's a world-renowned high-stakes fantasy football player. Co-founded the FFPC in 2008.
Need your sheet notes.
You may know him as the Prognosticator, or you may know him as Nag. I know him as the Boss, and you can follow him on Twitter at Alex_FFPC. Please welcome in Mr. Alex Kaganovsky. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight, man.
Thank you for having me, but that's a used to be high-stake player, thanks to the New York Gaming Commission, for one.
Yeah, you don't currently play, Alex, but you're still world-renowned. I mean, like, world renownment does not just go away because you stop playing. People still respect your opinion at a very high level.
That may be true, and especially with this appearance here in front of dozens and dozens of people all over the country. Yeah.
There's a lot of people.
Listen, we're all over terrestrial radio now in North America. So this is probably maybe 100.
We're big with
truckers,
and in like the redneck areas of the country.
Yeah, and a lot of
like here.
A lot of housewives like listening to this in the morning when they're getting breakfast ready and just getting the kids ready for school. They love it, and their husbands are always telling them to turn it off. But hopefully, we're bringing a special segment tonight that is going to really excite them. Dave, I'm going to give you this right here. The reason we are having the Prognosticator on tonight is he is fresh off his trip to Las Vegas, made some season-long wide receiver props. You can make these prop bets at any of the casinos on the strip there, and we want to highlight the ones that you made, Alex, tonight, betting on who is going to lead the NFL in receiving yardage, correct?
Yeah, so I walked into Caesar's Palace, and I frankly, I totally forgot about this because a lot of the hotels stopped putting these out the last few years, and I just happened to be passing by the sports book, and I asked them to print it out for me, and they did. They had them, and I always like to look for the home runs. I like to throw darts and educated darts, I guess, to some degree, and I thought I found some.
Yeah, and just to be clear, so we're business partners together, and to be clear, you did not text me or alert me to the possibility of betting with you at all. You just did this all on your own.
Well, as you may remember, there was one particular time when you and I were putting bets together, standing on the line, and you were in front of me, and you put the bet in, and as soon as you put the bet in, the line went up, right? The line. You remember that, don't you? So
yeah,
I'm not allowed to let that happen again.
That was at TI, and I bet on the Chiefs over for like $500, and then the line changed, and it went to like minus 150, and you everyone. By the way, everyone tells the story of how you had your huge wad of cash, and you were about to make a bet, probably for like $1,000 or whatever, even more, and they're like, oh, it went to 150, and you just put it right back in your pocket. Kurt thinks that's the best thing ever. Sorry.
Alex,
yeah,
I'm curious
that's exactly right.
I'm curious as to, now I'm looking at the sheet right here, and I think you made 5 different wagers. I want to know, of these 5, tell us about your favorite one, the one you're most excited about, the one that you feel is, gives you the best odds, and not necessarily the best odds, but the one that you feel really good about.
Well, as you're looking at them, obviously they're all, 3 of them are 100 plus. 100 to 1 plus. So these aren't, great odds. These are just flyers. These are darts. But, I try to think about who's in a position, who has the pedigree, who's in a position, who's in an offense that, has a chance at it. Not even who's going to do it, but who can give me a chance. Who can I, in week 14 or 15, who can I actually root for that may be within striking distance. And I think my favorite guy is Kelvin Benjamin at 100 to 1, because this is a guy who clearly has the pedigree. He's done it in the past in terms of putting up big yardage in the air, and I think he's undervalued in fantasy, and I think he was definitely. I think this was the wrong odds he had 100 to 1. I think he probably belongs more like in the 50 to 60 range.
I'm curious because Devontae Parker is listed as 100-1 on here too, and this is a guy that was getting a lot of preseason hype. You know, Adam Gase is talking him up, the Dolphins coaching staff is talking him up. I don't know if maybe this is hurt because Ryan Tannehill won't be throwing him the ball anymore, and Jay Cutler is going to be throwing it to him. But Devontae Parker at 100-1 is certainly very interesting as well.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. I probably would not have looked at his direction if it wasn't for Cutler. I mean, that was probably the only reason I did. But again, another pedigree guy, highly drafted and obviously hasn't done it. But look, everyone's saying how Cutler may be, he may be the favorite target for Cutler. I don't know if I believe it necessarily, but at 100-1, why not?
A guy who, and we're talking with Alex Kaganovsky, co-founder of the FFPC. Follow him on Twitter at Alex_FFPC, talking about his prop bets that he made on the season-long wagers he can make in Las Vegas on the receivers this year. Another guy that had semi-long odds, but a fresh face in a new place, and that is Ferrell Pryor. You placed a wager on him as well, and that is, I believe, 40-1 odds. Talk a little bit about why you like the Pryor wager there.
So the Pryor wager is a little bit different because I didn't think those were really great odds. I thought those are more truer odds. And actually, I didn't know this for a fact, but I would have expected he probably opened higher and he probably got banked down to 40. And I wouldn't be surprised if he got banked down even lower in the next couple of weeks when we get back to Vegas. So I didn't think 40-1 was great odds, but I just like the player and I like the situation. I like the fact that he's in a 5,000-yard offense. And clearly he is just an absolute beast in terms of athletic, being an athletic beast on the field and a pedigree athlete, not necessarily a wide receiver. So that's another guy that's a guy who I actually think has a really good chance, where the other guys are more darts.
And another one of those darts is John Brown, the number 2 receiver in Arizona. If his illness and his sickle cell, not necessarily a sickle cell behind it, but if they can treat it a little bit better than they did last year, and he's got the cyst off his spine now, certainly a lot of good things going in his direction. If Arizona,
what a crappy year he had.
Yeah, and if Fitz somehow falls off the face of the earth, or maybe if Fitz doesn't, and John Brown is just the field stretcher, he certainly has a good shot here to make a dent in this. Very long odds. Talk about John Brown.
Yeah, so at 125-1. Again, I mean, this is a pure dart. The way I looked at it is he an injury-prone receiver? Of course he is. But what if by some chance he plays 16 games, right? 16 healthy games. I think if that happens, I'm actually willing to make a wager, provided he plays 60 games, that he will be top 10 in receiving yards. And if you're getting a top 10 receiver at 125-1 odds, you know what? I'll take that. And who knows what could happen? Maybe he could actually, again, in Week 14, maybe I could be rooting for him, to fight against Antonio or Julio.
The final one we'll talk about
tonight.
Don't worry,
Julio will get hurt.
Yeah, the final one we'll talk about tonight is one that I think you're feeling probably a little bit better about after the Elliott news came out today, or maybe you're not. You can talk a little bit about it. But Dez Bryant at 22-1, you locked him up as well. I don't know what the odds are for him after the Elliott suspension, but talk a little bit about the Dez wager.
So to me, Dez is one of the like a second-tier favorite, right? So you have Antonio Brown at 4-1. You have Julio at I think he's 4-1 as well, and Beckham is at 6-1, right? And then you have guys like Evans and to me, AJ Green, and to me, Dez is right there. So when you get a guy who's clearly has had monstrous years, maybe not in receiving yards necessarily, but who can get it done in the right situation, and obviously the Zeke news helps that out. I think he's a guy who could do it, is in the right situation, and 22-1. I think that's a realistic. Those are good odds for a receiver who could really get it done.
You've been very gracious with your time tonight, Alex. We certainly appreciate you coming on. No, don't laugh.
His time is going to bill us.
It is
so gracious.
a busy month.
Thank you for spending time with us, Alex. It's so appreciated.
Yes, I do appreciate it. You may not appreciate it, but I do appreciate it. You know what? I can't wait to head out to Vegas, which we're doing in September. I'm going to win some money on this.
I like to spend some time at dinner with Alex in Vegas. A number of times.
That will be fun. Last question before we let you go, Alex. You're at Planet Hollywood getting things squared away. Is everything looking fantastic for a Boffo 10th anniversary main event this season?
Yeah, I think it's actually going to be really good. This for anyone who hasn't been to Planet Hollywood, it's right in the center of the Strip, right across the street from Bellagio. I mean, it's a perfect location. It's a upgraded hotel. They just renovated it. It's not a 5-star hotel, but you know what? It's pretty close to being a 4-star hotel. It's a huge upgrade where we were last year with the Westgate, and in terms of where the events are going to be, I mean, it's a fantastic ballroom, great mezzanine area where we're going to have the party right on top, overlooking the casino. Overall, it's just a really, really nice place, and the casino is small enough to, I think, when all of us are there, all the FFPC players, and we're all getting together on Friday, Saturday night, and kind of, hitting the tables all at once. I think you're going to turn around and you're going to see a lot of friendly faces next to you, or the table next to you. So it'll be a lot of fun.
Awesome. Alex Kaganovsky from the FFPC. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight, man. We'll talk to you again soon.
All right, cool, guys. See you later.
Thanks, buddy.
HSFF Hour rolls on right after this on the Fantasy Sports Radio Network. Final segment of the program this week. I am Eric Balkman. He is Dave Gerzak from the FFPC. I guess I'm from the FFPC, too. This is the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, Fantasy Sports Radio Network. 3 guests tonight. It was crazy. You and I didn't get to riff as much as we normally do, but I feel like you and I are coming out of here much, much wiser, much more prepared for our drafts this year.
Also a little bit less angry than normal at each other.
I've never been angry with you.
Oh,
ever.
Cool. That's just me.
Yeah, just you. I tend to infuriate people a little bit more on the show.
The other nice thing about Planet Hollywood that we were talking about before the break.
Yeah.
Is Ron Meyer, 2-packer. He loves to go. He's been going there for years, by the way, no matter where we were.
He's a big fan of the Earl of Sandwich at the Planet Hollywood.
2 things. The Earl of Sandwich, loves it.
Yeah.
But he uses that to get his base on because he goes to the drink place.
Oh,
he gets the yards. What is a yard of whatever?
Vodka, Everclear, whatever.
Everclear, yeah. But he gets the extra Everclear shots for like $5.
It's insane. And then he goes and drafts.
Then he doesn't draft. He does auctions. He does like a 5-hour auction.
But here's the thing. When you do those auctions, when you have that kind of liquor in your system, you can just go crazy and just get like 4 or 5 studs right away, and then just hang out and wait for your dollar players at the end.
That's actually probably the best strategy.
It's not a bad way to do it.
And then just rip on everybody else. He's terrible.
Exactly. So a lot of stuff we learned tonight. We learned how Michael Nazarek has been so successful, not only the Pros vs. Joes, but the FFPC main event. Pockets of goodness. Get 2 tight ends by the end of the 8th and 9th round. Certainly has worked out for him. Great stuff from Ferrell, Elliott. Once again tonight, we can look forward to that as we are counting down the days to Louisville. Cincinnati, which is full right now, that takes place next weekend. So if you want to draft in Cincinnati, you're going to have to do it again next year because they are all full up there. Online events definitely going on as well. Great stuff from Ferrell. Good insight on the Hopkins thing, given his contacts with the Texans.
I really like that a lot. I'm actually kind of more on Hopkins because, not more on, but I'm more on Hopkins than before.
No, I got it. I get it. Interesting stuff about Will Fuller, too. I think that if you're a dynasty owner with the type of camp that he was having, knowing that Deshaun Watson is going to be, having a full year of the NFL under his belt, I don't know how many games he's going to start, but knowing that Fuller is probably going to be the number 2 guy in that offense next year, might be a good idea to get Fuller on the cheap right now. He's going to be missing time. His value is only going to go up because each day represents a day closer to him being healthy again. So that strike while the iron's hot right now.
Well, the iron's not in the fire.
Well, it's not. Say like the trading iron is very hot.
Right.
The Fuller value iron is
frosty.
Yeah, it's frosty. So definitely do that. And then great stuff from Alex Kaganovsky tonight on these wide receiver prop bets. Your opinions on them? Did you have a favorite out of all the ones that he placed between Benjamin, Pryor, Bryant, John Brown, and I'm forgetting the other one that he did?
You have
it right there.
Yeah, I do have it right here. Did he do a Tyreek Hill?
No, he didn't, but he marked it off there.
Yeah, it's 75. I would have taken. Of course, I would have taken Tyreek Hill.
Obviously.
1 catch night, 32 yards.
Yeah, and it was a good one.
Try and average that out, boys.
Right.
75 catches times 32.
I would do like 80 catches.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah,
either way it works out.
It's record breaking is where it is. So great stuff. So 3 guests tonight. That was fantastic. Great stuff. Great job by all of them. I want to thank Michael Nazarek. I want to thank Ferrell, Elliott, and thank Alex Kaganovsky, Dave Gerzak, the FFPC, Rob Bryce, and of course each and every one of you for listening. We certainly appreciate you tuning in to listen to all our madness. But hopefully tonight you got a lot of good information as we are fast approaching draft time for many of you out there. I want to remind everybody to make your Planet Hollywood reservation. Sign up for the main event drafts with all the stats, dynasty, and the Football Guys Players Championship. Next Friday is our Kentucky preview show with Ferrell, Elliott making his return, as well as 2016 Kentucky champ Mark Salinas will be on the air with us as well. And I want to remind everybody that you are listening to the Fantasy Sports Radio Network. Mike Blewett, George First, Roto Expert Show is up next on Fantasy. Thanks so much for listening. FFPC7 discount code at FFMastermind.com.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com that was broadcast live and heard around the world. Eric and Dave will be back next week with more analysis, interviews, and advice from a guest much smarter than they are. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk with you again next week.
Him again, the sound the engine in is like a bird. You see fireworks and Corvette tires skirt the boulevard. I know how you work, I know just who you are. See, use a bitch, your hormones probably switch inside your DNA.
How do you make a summer day sparkle? That's 0 calorie, 0 sweetener LaCroix. Sparkling water naturally essenced with flavors like tangerine and berry. Available at Target. The perfect way to make your summer sparkle. Another, please. Good. Very good. How do you make a summer day sparkle? That's 0 calorie, 0 sweetener LaCroix. Sparkling water naturally essenced with flavors like tangerine and berry. Available at Target. The perfect way to make your summer sparkle. Another, please. Good. Very good.